Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast. I'm Jo Hickey Hall, and my guest this time is Siôn. So you've got a bunch of stories that we've been emailing for a little while. You
Yeah,
told me about a few things that you'd experienced, and your kind of what had piqued your interest when you heard certain encounters on the podcast.
I just came across your podcast by pure chance, I think, and I saw modern fairy sightings. I thought, wow, this reminds me of something that my uncle told me, and this is what initially got me to contact you. Shall I tell you the story that my uncle told me?
Yes, please. I would love to hear that story.
Right, okay, yeah. Basically, my uncle, who's no longer with us, sadly, he was in hospital at the time, and I was visiting him daily. One day, on the way back from work, I stopped at the hospital, went in to see him, and he was more animated than usual. I thought, that's good. How are you, Wyn? His name was Wyn. He said, I'm right, Sean, I'm better today. I've heard a fantastic story. He said, and you're going to love this, he said to me. What happened? Well, basically, a friend of his, my uncle was a climber, hiker, climber, rock climber, and a friend of his had been walking in an area between Barmouth on the northwest coast of Wales, and inland there's a place called, oh God, well, it's near enough, Trawsfynydd. It's sort of northwest Wales, basically. And there's an area that's really sort of, a remote space. And it's a place that is, it's quite a magical place. There's a lot of history and the UFO sightings. There was a thing called the Llanegryn lights. I don't know if you're aware of this. Have you heard of it?
I looked up the lights from around 1900, and
Yeah.
yeah, what was the name of the place again? Could you repeat it?
Llan, as everything else in Wales, is start with Llan, which means church, by the way. Yeah, it's sort of church area. Llan and then Egryn, and
Egryn,
that's
that's right.
yeah, Egryn, Egryn.
That's right. I wasn't sure how to pronounce it, so Egryn, right?
Egryn, you got it. That's it, spot on. Yeah, yeah. He's a Celtic saint, I think he was. So it's the Church of Egryn. Basically, lights were being seen the beginning of the century during there was a religious revival in Wales, and there was a woman, I can't even remember her name actually. Some of the listeners will probably know. Oh, what's her name? Anne something. Oh, I can't remember. But she was going around the churches and stuff. I should say chapels actually, preaching her sermons. And wherever she would preach, people would see lights in the sky around the church, and there were reports of lights bouncing on the roof of the church, and all sorts of stuff. Interesting. And reporters came from London, Liverpool Echo. Oh no, I can't remember. The Guardian came down, and they wrote big pieces about it, and they're all available online. And some of the descriptions, they fit exactly the same as UFOs, modern UFO descriptions. Incredible. And they'd actually follow her from wherever she would be preaching. Then these lights would follow along. And this lasted for quite a long period. And anyway, it was called the Llanegryn lights period. I think it's one of the earliest UFO sort of, flaps that I've ever heard of.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there's some sort of Earth flights. I don't know if you've heard of the
I
term.
have, and actually, what I did read about it at the time was that they thought it might be to do with some fault lines that are around the area, and this is
Yeah,
something that has been, yeah, so
that's it, exactly. Yeah, yeah. These Earth flights tend to be linked with fault lines or any quartz in the area. deep down in the earth. Quartz seems to attract him for some reason.
Yeah.
Anywhere where there's mines or deep lakes, any hole that goes down deep into the earth, these lights tend to be seen in these areas.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Especially when you think about well, certainly in Jersey, a lot of the dolmens are made of quartz granite,
Yeah,
quartz in the granite. And,
yeah.
the kind of resonance of that having some sort of power in some way that we can't or no longer
Mm,
understand.
yeah.
I'll just look up her name quickly. Yes, so Mary Jones,
Mary Jones, that's it.
35-year-old preacher,
That's it.
religious revival movement in the early 1900s at a chapel in Egryn,
Yeah,
Barmouth and Harlech. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is just on the corner from the story that I'm about to relate to, actually.
Yeah, okay, right.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Yes.
just setting the scene for the area.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that happens there for some reason. But anyway, so I go back to my uncle's story.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, crazy. He says, right, his friend had been to visit him that afternoon, and he related a story where he'd only just got back from a walk in this area that we're on about. And he was walking along, and he felt this atmosphere, and he could hear music in the distance, coming and going, very sort of faint on the wind, distant sort of sound. And he couldn't make out what the music was. He could just hear notes, but he couldn't hear a melody, or he couldn't even tell if it was modern music, ancient music, or choral, or whatever. He could just hear these sounds coming and going, basically. And the area is very sort of rough, hard walking. It's hard to walk on it. It's very swampy. And I think from what my uncle said was his friend was jumping from one sort of little dry area onto the next one and jumping over these really wet patches, boggy area. And he got to a footpath, which wasn't a footpath, it was a sheep track, It's very remote, remember, this is very remote. It's one of the remotest areas in Wales, I'd say, probably. Anyway, and he suddenly became aware that this music was around him, and he felt compelled to turn around. He turned around and he saw a circle of people, human size, in a circle, holding hands, facing the middle of the circle, with their backs towards him. But they were in an area where he just passed, And he said, how didn't I see them? Great. How didn't I see them? Where they come from, So he sort of felt that was a bit strange, and he felt unnerved, obviously. And then one of them turned round. One of the people that were in the circle turned round, and it was a man who had a beard. I think he said he was dark-haired, dark beard, and they were all wearing white clothes. I got no details if they were modern clothes or medieval or little waistcoats or whatever, I don't know. It's just white. And this guy turned round to him and gestured to him to come to us, with his arm. He was sort of waving him back towards them. And he said when that happened, he felt he wanted to get out of there quick, that made him scared. That scared him. So he sort of moved off quickly, and he just walked off, and he thought, what? He thought that he was hallucinating, He must have been hallucinating, he thought, right? So he carried on walking, and as he was walking, about 2 or 3 minutes passed, and the music was still with him. You could hear the music. And he just got to this point where he felt eyes burning into his back, sort of thing. He felt, there's something behind me. And he just had to turn around to have a look, And they were there again, at the same distance to him again. Not in the distance, but the same distance away from him again, as if they'd sort of followed him and set up camp again and did the same thing again behind him. And they were still in this circle, and the guy with the beard, he had turned round and he was looking at Wyn's friend, but this time he had an angry look on his face. He looked angry, he looked displeased, you know. He said he felt as if he should go with them, and that they were really annoyed that he wasn't taking the offer to join them. You know, at this point, he felt threatened, really threatened, turned on his heel and sped off down the path. And from what I understand, I think that was more or less the end of it. The music faded away and he got out of there. And he came down the side of the mountains towards the sea where Llanegryn and this area is. And that was it. You know, within a few hours, I think maybe the following day, perhaps, he was back, with my uncle and told my uncle the story. I know it's a second-hand account. I didn't see it myself, obviously, but my uncle, he would not have lied about it. He's not that. He wasn't that sort of guy. He did believe in other. You know, he knew there was more to life than what we just see with our eyes, and he knew that I was interested as well in this sort of stuff. And he told me, and he told me in good faith. You know, he was definite that it had happened to his friend. And unfortunately, I've been trying to track this friend down. I've been asking my auntie, Wyn's wife, who this guy was, and she doesn't remember. She half remembers the story, but you know, it didn't click with her like it did with me, and she just put it to one side. And so I've got no link to the story. It's so frustrating, Joe.
Yeah.
So that's it, basically.
You never, I mean, he might turn up. It is a really amazing story. And
it is.
Did your uncle, he was in hospital at the time, did he recover?
He recovered from that bout of illness, but it wasn't shortly afterwards. He sort of regressed and some sort of cancer came into him as well. And he died about 2 years after that. Yeah.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah. He was a good bloke.
It was lovely for your uncle's friend to come in and, you know, share this amazing story with him. And it sounds like it kind of perked him up and gave him some life. And also it kind of, you know, it helps you when you're in a situation like that and you're unwell. It kind of aids your faith too, you know?
Yeah, definitely. It probably did give him more meaning because he was seriously ill and he was probably contemplating death. You know, in his quieter moments. So this perhaps could be conceived as giving him some hope that there's something else after death.
And it's interesting that, you know, at the time, there's a couple of points to make, really. I'm thinking about the landscape, and I'll come back to that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But your uncle is, you know, looking at potentially not being on this earthly plane anymore at that time. His very good friend, I mean, must have been a very good friend to, you know, come forward and come in to see.
Yeah.
You know, he would have been kind of, I'm assuming, perhaps even thinking about that when he was walking. And then, you know, he gets this reaching out from the other world, which he did, you know, says no to and walks away and follows him. And that's, you know, I think that the proximity of kind of death with the circumstances, I think,
Definitely.
Potentially of relevance, let's say.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he got away. Like how many stories do we hear if people are called back?
Yeah, well, Joe, just to cut across at that point there, after I heard this story, I decided to do a bit of research about the area, and I actually found 2 fairy stories from that very area where he was. within a sort of radius of about 2 miles.
Mm.
Yeah, there's two lakes in the area. Well, no, sorry, there are more than two lakes in the area, but there are two lakes that are associated with fairy stories. Exactly where he was, and one of the lakes is called Llyn Barfog. Right, Llyn is the Welsh word for lake.
Mm.
Llyn, double Lyn, and Barfog means bearded. Yeah, the bearded lake or the bearded one's lake,
Mm.
right? And this guy that was in the circle, strangely enough, had a beard, didn't he?
Yeah, indeed.
It could be a coincidence, obviously it could be a coincidence, but there's a link there.
It sounds quite druidic as well, the wearing of the white and the white, long white, well, I don't know if it's a long white beard, bearded man
Yeah.
kind of standing in the circle.
Yeah, yeah. The sort of cliched druidic look,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, maybe, yeah. But the beard, and anyway. But that was near that. Llyn Barfog was. I think I've worked it out. I looked at Google Maps, and I don't know where Wyn's
Mm.
friend had his sighting exactly. But it's the whole area is no more than about, I don't know, it's probably about 20 miles radius. So it's in a radius of 20 miles, this lake. And there's a fairy story related to that one,
Yeah.
to Llyn Barfog. Oh, there's two stories actually. One of them involves your friend Gwynedd, which I've heard on your program a few times, mentioned on your program.
Mhm.
Yeah, my North Walian accent, by the way, we say, for you, we say y. It's a bit like French, y, you know.
Yeah.
Y. So, Gwynedd Nydd, we say. But if I was South Walian or Mid Walian, I'd say Gwynedd Nydd.
Right. Green up new.
Yeah,
Green
yeah,
up
but in
there.
North Wales, they say Nydd.
Mm.
Yeah, Nydd,
Mm.
yeah. Gwynedd Nydd. So, when you see the U, it's a U sound.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, but apparently, Gwynedd Nydd, the gateway to Annwn,
Right.
his realm,
Mm.
is actually in this lake, according to the local stories. Yeah, and it's guarded by the ladies of the lake, who are they're seen as fairies dressed in green, and they warn people away or they usher people in, depending on the person. You
Yeah.
know, yeah. And there's this story that goes back. I'm not sure when. I think it's the beginning of the century. It's been written down. Hold on, 2 seconds. The story is published in Welsh Outlook, printed in October. Hold on. Oh no, that's another one. Sorry, there's two stories. Llyn Barfog. Right, yeah. Oh yeah, here's a little aside,
Mhm.
quick one. I told you that the name Llyn Barfog means bearded lake,
Mm.
or lake of the bearded one, the bearded one. Well, this interpretation of the name was done by a guy called Sir John Rhys. He was a Celtic scholar in the 1890s, 1900s in Oxford. And he's written a book about all the fairy stories. And so it's a bit of a I can't remember the name of the book or anything. But anyway, as it happens, this guy, Sir John Rhys, is an ancestor of mine. He's in my family, and I'm actually named after him.
No. Oh
Yeah, yeah,
my goodness. I have heard of him. Yes.
yeah. You probably
Yeah.
have. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's pretty well known. He's a Celticist more than anything else. I think
Yeah.
he was responsible for sort of labelling the two branches of Celtic language. You've got the P Celtic and the Q Celtic. The Gaelics on one side and the Welsh and Cornish and Breton on the other side. Yeah, he was responsible for that, and he's related to me. It's coincidence, isn't it?
That is really interesting, isn't it? Because you were mentioning before that, there might be something familial in might be something going on in the family.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You share some of these kind of sense of sensitivity with your brother as well, and
yeah,
it does make you wonder, doesn't it? That
yeah.
he obviously had the interest too. You definitely have the interest for it. And
Yeah.
that whole area where I was reading that in the 1700s it was kind of drained because it was all just kind of marshland, and it was drained by a family, I believe. That whole area,
It,
and is that correct?
which area? What the area that I'm talking about now? This.
Up at the northwest there, that area where yeah, that area. I think it was when I was looking up the Egryn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I haven't heard that, Joe. I couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I
What have
will
you
double
heard?
check that, but it could have been one of the other areas up in North Wales. But I was thinking about you mentioning the fact that it was kind of marshy land,
Mm,
and it comes up occasionally because it is a liminal place because
mm,
between it's not quite land, it's not quite water, it's this kind of in between step,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
again kind of conjures up the potential for this to be a thin place, this to be somewhere that these beings can maybe come through, or we've sent
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Well, Llyn Barfog is known to be a place where the veil between
Mm,
everyday our world and Annwn is thin.
yes, it
Yeah.
certainly is it, doesn't it, from all of the activity. Oh, it'd
Mm.
be brilliant if you ever did track down your uncle's friend. I imagine,
Oh, I'd love to.
yeah, I guess hiking groups. I don't know. Did they even have hiking groups back then that they would have probably just gone off hiking by themselves?
Yeah,
But
I think they did. Yeah, they were sort of yeah, free spirits.
Mhm.
They were friends since the '60s, so they were sort of '60s people. you know,
Good time.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, somebody listening might it might
yeah.
jolt something with them that they may have had experiences out that way. So so let's see if something comes in there. But yeah, certainly
That would
that's
be fantastic. Yeah, yeah. I'd love it if somebody could put more sort of skin on the bones of this story.
definitely. So
Yeah,
do you know what the other two stories were about Gwynedd
yeah.
and
This story was logged by a historian called John Pugh in an article in Archaeologia. I can't say the word. Archaeologia Cambrensis, Volume 4, 1853. Uh, he describes the Llyn, the lake, as one of the many communications between the outward world of ours and the inner one of Annwn, the unknown world, the dominion of Gwynedd, the mythic king of the fabled realm, peopled by those children of mystery, plant Annwn. Plant is Welsh for children. It's children of Annwn. So basically, the story was that there was a white cow that belonged to the fairies in the lake. This
right.
cow lived in the lake with the fairies. But one day, the cow decided to join the local farmer's herd. He oh, she, I should say, she wanted to get on with some. I was going to say human, but non-fairy cows.
Mhm. Yeah.
And basically, the farmer was delighted when he saw that one of the fairy cows, one of Gwyned's own cows, had joined his herd.
Yeah.
And what this cow eventually made him very rich because he would share the cow out to bulls in the area, and he'd be paid for this, you see.
Mhm.
So he made a lot of money, and eventually the poor old cow was worn out, and so the farmer decided to butcher the cow.
Mhm.
Right. So this is where it gets hairy. They decided to butcher the cow next to the lake. So the local butcher came up to do the dirty deed, and he was about to bring down the knife on the cow's neck, and something held his hand in the air. He couldn't bring the knife down, and there they were, the ladies of the lake, the green guardians of the lake, the female fairies. They stopped him killing the cow. They took the cow back, and the cow lived happily ever after with the fairies in the lake. Probably it doesn't say what happened to the cow, but the farmer, because of his uncaring attitude towards the cow who had helped him so much, he suffered. He got ill. He got poor, and he died. A poor farmer. So that was the end of him. Yeah, but that was the story. Llyn Barfog.
I'm familiar with the story, and I'm not
Yeah.
sure if Owen Staten might have
Oh, he probably would know, wouldn't he?
between times. But yes, I have either read or heard this story before, and I think there are similar stories that we find kind of, spread perhaps in Wales, potentially even Ireland as well. And of
Yeah.
course, you've got the join in Ireland, which is all about, the white cow and the
Right.
white cow and the brown cow. So that's quite interesting that,
Yeah.
they are seen as these sacred beasts.
Yeah. Well, the Irish, they came over to this part of Wales. There's always been a big link there because it's not far over the Irish Sea, is it?
Well, St
And they're
Patrick
right.
was Welsh, wasn't he?
Eh?
St Patrick was Welsh,
He was apparently. Yeah, he was. Yeah.
wasn't he? Went over to Ireland.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, he spoke Brythonic, didn't he?
yeah.
Sort of the precursor of the modern Welsh language. Yeah.
Now that's something that you brought up that as a potential, because I know that you were talking about, you referred to Neil Rushton's experience up at Glastonbury Tor when he heard these voices, and you're not the only one to write and actually point that out. In fact,
Yeah.
that the idea that the language that he was hearing could have been Brythonic. Do you want to just speak a little about the Brythonic language there and
Yeah. Well, I'm not a linguist, but I'm just a sort of interested, enthusiastic linguist in a way. I'm interested in all sort of Celtic, Welsh, Irish, Scottish histories, and the language is. Well, I've always been fascinated with words. Yeah, because God, the words are the key into our ancient history, into the people's minds, and certain words have certain nuances which you get in one language, but you won't get it in another language. It. So maybe there's a descriptive word in English that will make you feel a certain way, make you think a certain way, and then perhaps there isn't one that corresponds to it in Welsh, perhaps not exactly, but the Welsh one will have a different feeling to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it gives you an insight into the minds of the ancients in a
Yeah.
way, isn't it? It's a key to the past, isn't it? The
Yeah.
word. Yeah,
Which is why colonization is so damaging, because they kill the language.
yeah.
They're killing your connection to your local landscape and all the way.
Oh, don't get me started.
I know, yeah. Well,
I
yes.
know, I know. It's people. I've got to say this about my fellow Welsh speakers, and this will probably ring a chord with the Irish as well.
Mhm.
They don't realise how important the language is in a way. You know, People just talk it every day, and if it dies, it dies. Oh, so what, sort of thing. People don't. They don't get the richness of the thing. They don't. They don't understand. I don't. They just think it's an old-fashioned thing. Welsh. It's not cool to speak Welsh, even in this area. There's a lot of kids. Kids don't want to speak Welsh. They speak English with each other. They're all first language Welsh speakers, but when they're together in a group, they tend to speak English together.
Right. Oh, what do you need?
Not everywhere, but in quite a lot of people places. Anyway, yeah.
What you need is a local version of Kneecap to arise. Have you been following the Irish band Kneecap? Look them up.
Oh, a kneecap.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Yes.
I heard them about a week ago. Some young lads, they're really, yeah, yeah, I haven't heard them. Yeah, they sound good. Yeah, I like
Obviously,
their attitude. Yeah,
yeah. So the Irish speaking, this band, and it has actually made it really cool again. For I think that a lot of the teachers in Ireland are saying they've done more for the Irish language than any other attempts have been over the last kind of 100 years or whatever, because they've made
brilliant.
it cool again. So yeah,
Brilliant, brilliant.
kind
Well,
of a
there is and there has been since the 60s, a Welsh language pop, rock, reggae scene. There are bands playing in Welsh, that's where Super Furry Animals came from.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I myself have played in loads of bands over the years. That's why my ears are buggered. I could tell you about Llyn Cynwch, the other lake in the area where this was
Yeah.
seen. Or I could tell you about my own experiences because I'm aware that time is ticking
Okay.
away and
Well,
I
tell
have
me
to,
about your experiences first, then, and we can always
yeah.
talk about the lake. Yeah.
Okay then, okay. Yeah, I've got two or three experiences where I think are more sort of pertinent to this program. It sort of they involve what could be construed as fairies or nature's spirits of some sort. My father had only just died. This last August, right? He just died. And my brother and I had gone for a walk 2 or 3 days after my father had died. He died in Cardiff and we travelled back up to North Wales. And we just went for a walk and it was such a picturesque area. It was, if you ever wanted to film a fairy film, this would be the place. Trees, green trees, fantastic, small lakes. Just, you turn around the corner and there's a little lake, a very picturesque area. Anyway, we were walking along and there was a point where my brother, he said, I think we better get back to the car. It will be getting dark soon. And we knew we had about an hour's walk to get back to the car. So he walked off down the path ahead of me and I stopped to take some photographs with my phone camera. It was so picturesque. I took a few arty pictures of reflections on the lake and stuff, and this stone. There was this stone sticking out of the water. The water was so calm that the stone just looked as if it was floating in midair. It was incredible. I'll send you the picture if you want to see it. It's incredible. Anyway, so there I was, just taking these pictures, and I thought, hold on, my brother's walked off in the wrong direction. He's walked off in completely the wrong direction. And I thought he's going to get lost. He's going to go into the trees and he's going to get lost, because it was a very sort of wild place.
Yeah.
Again, it was quite not desolate, but cut off. And he'd walked off into the trees, and I suddenly thought, well, my brother's not very well. He's suffering with early onset dementia. He's a young guy, but I thought he'd get lost, is it? So I felt concerned. My God, he's going to get lost in the trees. So I tried to phone him, and it wasn't ringing. There was no reception. It was just quiet. The phone was quiet. There was nothing on it. And suddenly, when I was looking at the phone and willing him to answer the phone, something caught my eye on the left. I looked, and I saw this little green light coming up the footpath towards me. And it was like flitting, like a butterfly. Yeah. And there was a sort of wispy smoke or powder coming off it. Yeah, I got no idea what it was. And I thought, is that some sort of will-o'-the-wisp or some sort of swamp gas or something? And it was coming towards me. It came across the path towards me. I don't know what it is. I've showed it to quite a few of my friends, and everybody's we're all stuck. We don't know what it is.
Gosh. And how was your brother? What happened? Where?
Well, yeah. Well, strange enough, right? I took this picture, and just after taking the picture, the phone rang, and he answered it straight away. But as soon as he answered it, this light went.
Right. Yes. And how big
And
was the light then? How big was the green light?
say again, sorry.
How big was the light?
Um, I, can you see my hand? I'd estimate it to be about 3 inches across, and it was a bit oblong. It was wispy, and it had a bit of a tail on it. And there was also another light travelling with it, above it, a little speck. It was like a little spark.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
like a spark, and this green, the green was emerald green,
Mm.
and it was. I was looking at it against a background of ferns, which were green as well, but they were completely different greens, and it was completely distinct to the green behind it.
Amazing.
Yeah, and there was a lake about 20 foot away through the trees. You couldn't see it because the trees are so thick, but there was a lake there. So I've sort of, I told a friend of mine, and he said, "Oh, that's swamp gas," he says, and that was it. He just, but I tend to cling on to the thing. I sort of thought I took it to be my father, or
Yes.
some sort of spirit
Yeah.
linked to my father, or some sort of well, I thought at the time. I remember telling my brother that this is typical fairyland. I said, and suddenly this light comes towards me, flitting towards me. It's quite archetypal fairy light, you know.
I mean, it's amazing. Like you, I went into nature after my dad passed, and I felt him everywhere around me. I was swimming in the sea actually
Yeah,
after he died,
yeah,
and just coping with the grief. And
yeah.
I've never felt anything quite like that in my life. It was a real sense of gnosis that he was everywhere. He was in the water. He was in the seagulls' cries. He was in
Wow.
children's voices on the beach. He was in the wind. I just could feel him all around. So I think, this can happen when somebody's passed.
Hmm.
It's like they rejoin the all again. They become part of the all.
Yeah, yeah,
You,
yeah.
you can. It's almost like they're speaking to you. So it does not surprise me that and to witness something like that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's funny though because with your experience, you said that you were aware of your father around you and everything permeating everything around you, but I wasn't thinking of my father at all. He wasn't in my mind. And then there's another experience. This is a very fleeting experience that I used to have when I was a kid,
Okay. Yeah.
when I was a toddler, and I was about 5, 4, 5. And I was reminded of it. And this is one of the things that prompted me to get in touch with you, actually. It was, I was reminded of it by one of your guests, and she was talking about little black folk, like little
Yeah.
dark black fairies, not black skin, but just black, like shadows.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And suddenly, when she started talking about it, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh my God. And my memories came back. I had memories of, I used to encounter, well, as I was going to sleep, this is all in my mind's eye. It's not like your experience where you saw something in the trees, didn't you?
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
slope, yeah.
Yeah. Well, mine was, it was in my mind, but it was exactly the same as the woman on your show was describing.
Yeah.
And they were horrible. They were little, like sprites or small little fairies. I said they were a foot tall. There was about 7, 8, 9 of them. I had a feeling that they were a family, and they were spiteful, and they were mocking me, and they were scaring me as well. And they had this high pitched voices, right? Which sounded like all talking across each other. And but they were sort of pointing at me. They were jumping up and down, and they had. I remember imagining that they had sort of spears, some sort of spear type thing, or even a piece of wood. It wasn't a straight spear. It was like a branch or something. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. But they were just black. These things were, and I used to hate going to sleep because I knew, oh God, I'm going to encounter these little black fairies again. But this was before I knew anything about fairies. Obviously, I was only a 4 or 5 year old. But when I heard your guest speaking about them, it just hit me. Ah, yeah. And I had this emotion, ever so fleeting, of how I felt when I was that toddler. It brought it all back. But I don't know. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's some sort of archetype thing that we all sort of encounter when we're children. But why are these archetypes? Why are they archetypes? Why do we all experience similar things independently of each other? Do you know? They must be there. It must be a valid outside trigger making it happen, I'd have thought.
It seems to me like they are beings that exist, like we do, and but we're not ordinarily aware of them because they seem to exist in some kind of parallel world that we don't see. But of course, if we weren't so tied to the material, we would, because as kids, we're still closer to the other worlds, having just come from there.
Definitely, definitely.
And we're not yet socialized if we haven't been to school and if we haven't got, a particularly strict, restrictive household, then we're
Yeah.
not yet socialized. Whereabouts in because that I'm struggling to remember the name of the episode, so I'm just going to very quickly look up the name of that one because I know who you're talking about. Yeah, it was
What the
that
little
episode was The Puppets Are Coming For Me.
was it right?
I think so, where these dark little like imp-like beings are in the kind of what was the fireplace area where and,
Right.
and was it that and
Yeah,
the little
that
girl
sounds about right. Yeah.
be kept awake at night, being
Yeah.
and then the dark man came along one night as well and she thought he was going to tell them to stop it and actually he just laughed, which is really sinister and creepy.
Oh, that's it. That's it. You've got it. Sinister is the word. They were sinister. They were threatening and sinister. They weren't friendly. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I had the same sort of. Yeah, when he said sinister, that was it. And there was a strong, really strong presence about them. Yeah,
How many do you reckon? How many of them do you think there were? Did you say 6 or 7, or am I just?
6 or 7, something like that. They could have been more even, but I could see they were in a line in front of me, lined up in a line in front of me. And I was aware that there could have been a few others behind them.
And whereabouts in your room were they? Comparison to where,
They were just superimposed against the corner of my bedroom, my
Yeah.
brother's bedroom.
Yeah.
Nothing special about the corner. It was just a corner of the room.
It's interesting.
It wasn't spooky, and I wasn't afraid of the room or anything like that.
Mm.
You know, but it was something that would just come out of nowhere.
And
There was no sort of obvious trigger.
no, did you have any strange dreams as a child?
Yeah.
What kind of
Oh
things
yes.
did you dream?
Yeah. I I remember one of them. I must have been all of 3 years old, 4. It was a really strange dream. It was I used to dream of this huge beach, right, with rock pools on it, loads of rock pools, and a load of pyramid-shaped stones, just loads of them. But what was odd about it, there was a Model T, there's a Model T Ford that Laurel and Hardy used to drive,
Yeah.
driving up and down in the distance, going over these stones, these pyramid-shaped stones. And there was a horrible, longing, bleating sound of a distant sheep, which would really, it was incongruous because this was by the sea, but I could hear this sort of, Sort of sound. I remember that dream. That was a strange one. I used to have that a few times, and I never understood what it meant.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was so weird. That
So it's
was.
like a recurring dream. This was kind of an environment, a landscape that you would kind of go into and have recurring dreams.
Yeah, I
Mm.
used to go into a landscape. That's the perfect word for it. Perfect description. Sort of mystic landscape, which was always quite daunting, and the sea was always there, and there's always something there. There was always something there, an atmosphere.
Yes.
Be it Gwynedd, be it whatever. There was always something there watching,
Yeah.
waiting, watching. That sort of feeling. Yeah, I remember that.
So what did you try to do to kind of did you did you try to get them to go away in any way? Or,
Did I
yeah.
did. There was another dream that I managed to control and beat it, if you know what I mean. There was as a child, I had a period where I was wet in the bed. And I was only about 3 or 4 years old, and the reason was, right, every night I dream of my little teddy. I had a little teddy who was only about 10 centimetres tall, and I used to call him Pinky. He was pink, obviously. And I remember him now. And but in my dream, right, Pinky would be larger. He'd be the size of an adult, yeah. And he'd walk, he'd move, and he'd be wearing this wee willy winky woolen cap. This striped, long wee willy winky cap, like Santa Claus's
Bed
cap.
cap. Bed
Yeah,
cap. Yeah.
he'd be wearing one of them, and he'd be waiting for me in the hallway, stopping me get to the toilet in my dreams. And oh God, I remember asking my dad about it, and I asked him, "What can I do about this? I'm peeing in bed because I can't get past this pinky, this huge pinky in my dreams." And he said to me, "Bach," he said, "there are things in life that you've got to face somebody. You've got to face up to him now. You've got to tell him to leave you be and let you go to the toilet." He said, "Yeah." And that gave me the confidence and the strength to do it. And I did do it in the next dream, the next night, I think. And I never peed in the bed again.
That is wonderful. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that, I like that he didn't tell you, don't be silly or anything like that, but just kind of gave you the confidence. This is,
yeah, that was good. That was good of him.
yeah, so it's like acknowledge that fear and tell it, no,
Yeah.
go away, I need to.
And do you know, Joe? I've actually used that feeling, that strength that he gave me at that moment.
Yeah.
I've used it. I'm still using it now. If there's a daunting something coming up, I'll just take the bull by the horns. It'll be all right. Just do it. You know.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. That's it set you up, hasn't it? As
It has, yeah. Strangely enough, it's not that I act on it every time, mind you, but it does help.
well, the thing is, and I've said this numerous times on this podcast, is that as parents, we always want to just say, "Oh no, darling, don't worry, it's fine, it's not there." But actually, that just leaves them thinking, "Well, what am I experiencing then?" And then
Yeah,
nothing makes sense anymore. So it's
yeah,
actually better just to talk to them about what it is that is frightening about it and give them the confidence as
yeah.
your dad did to
Mm,
say, to face it and you know, to
that's
face
it.
it in some way.
Yeah,
Because
brilliant.
ultimately, you're
Yeah,
right, we do get situations in life that we do have to face. And I think, it works just as well in this world as it does in the other world to acknowledge that there is something there that needs looking at and, and fill them with confidence that they can get through it.
I've got one more. Do you want
Oh,
me to
you
tell
do.
this
Oh, no,
last one?
please. Yes, 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 yes.
This one, the reason I want to tell you this one is because I want answers, and maybe you could help me to explain what this was, what happened. I was about, oh God, mid-20s, gone for a walk, three of us, three lads. I used to, I was playing in bands at the time, and we lived the life where we'd be up until 3 o'clock in the morning. We'd be in bed until about 10 o'clock in the morning, sign on the door and play bands, play the bands for a few years. And this period, we'd gone for a walk, and it was a fantastic moon. It was a full moon. You know these super moons, yellow super moon. It was one of them, and it was an extremely still night. There was absolutely no breeze, nothing. It was very still. I still remember that stillness, as I haven't experienced it since then. You know, yeah, it was so still. It was almost as if there was something was waiting to happen. There was a sort of feeling of waiting. You know, it could be my imagination. It probably was. But anyway, we were walking down an A road where I used to live at the time. And I remember we were approaching a crossroads, Brimbilla Crossroads. And we were probably about 20 foot away from the actual crossroads itself. And I crossed the road. One of the lads had gone up ahead, and he'd gone up the hill. You know, he'd gone down to the crossroads and up the hill. And me and the other guy, we were just crossing the road, and I got to the dotted line down the middle of the road. And I just had this, whoa, what I can only explain as I didn't see anything, didn't smell anything, didn't hear anything. I just felt this, like, I could only explain it, like an attack. And it was instant. My whole vision went white, and I felt as if there was some sort of, well, it felt like a lion. It wasn't a lion, but it felt as if there was some sort of monster lion thing shouting right in my face, you know? Wow! Jesus! It was, it just came out of nowhere. It wasn't one of these things where we were trying to spook each other out or anything. We weren't even talking about ghosts or anything spooky. We were just having a quiet walk. It was night, by the way. Yeah, I did tell you it was night. But I jumped back, and my friend next to me, he jumped at the same time. We both jumped, right? And we went right back to the pavement, straight back to the pavement. I turned to him and said, "What was that? Did you feel that?" And he said, I did. What the hell was that? You know, we were both shaken. And my dog, who was with us, came from the adjacent field, whimpering out in the field, running towards us, hid behind my legs, crying, whimpering, cowering down. And basically that was it. That was it. Nothing else happened. But it was such an experience, right? That every time I passed that way since then, and 20 years have passed, more than 20 years, probably about 30 years. 30 years have passed. I always think of it every time I go past there. And for the first few years after it happened, I was really reticent to just drive past it in my car. It was that strong, this feeling. And it felt like nature. It felt very powerful. Threatening, wild. It felt wild. It felt like the dogs of Anon, you could say, but it felt wild, and it felt powerful and threatening, and it did feel, I must say, it felt evil. It really scared us, and I don't know what it was. Have you heard any other stories similar?
Well, I'm immediately thinking about the fact that it's a crossroads.
Yeah.
A place where, beings, especially the kind of darker forces, if you like, although I wouldn't say, that there's a kind of evil or anything like that, I take that your experience of it was evil.
Yeah.
But, these ideas of the devil at the crossroads, and, that beings, well, people were buried at crossroads, of course, that fell outside of
Well, can I cut across there?
yeah.
You just reminded me of something.
Yeah.
When we got home that night, we went to one of the lads' mother's house, and we told her what happened.
Yeah.
And she was brilliant. She was typical old-fashioned Welsh. Same sort of thing as old-fashioned Irish.
Yeah.
They believe in this stuff. They know it's there. They don't poo-poo you. They just say, "Oh, yeah." Give you a knowing look and walk away, sort of thing, we told her, and she said, "I know what that was." She says, there's the town is a quarrying area, slate quarry area. It used to be. They still do it on a smaller scale, but at that time, at the turn of the century, there's a huge quarry. There's about 3,000 people working there, and there was a huge strike. It lasted for 3 years there. It was one of the biggest, if not the first, industrial strike that lasted that long anywhere in the world. They were supported by workers around the world, from America to London or whatever. It was incredible.
About this,
It,
yeah.
it absolutely it destroyed the community and the town. It split people down the middle because some people went back to work. And they were called bradwyr in Welsh, which is traitors in English. Yeah. But anyway, during this time, there was hardship and people were poor. And what would happen often, children were born, babies were born, and they were very ill. They were poorly, so they didn't have the money to look after them, and they actually, according to the sort of stories anyway, they'd be thrown into disused quarry pits into the lakes. Yeah, and our friend's mother told us that one of these lakes, one of these pits, was right next to the crossroads. And there is a copse there, which I found out later on. The copse was around this quarry hole. And apparently this is, you said, associated with death. Well, they used to throw babies into this lake, apparently. Yeah, and there is another lake just on the corner called Llyn Barfog, which is literally translates to the lake of what's the word? What happens when you go into the water and you can't breathe? You drown. The lake of drowning babies.
Oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
yeah, yeah.
And do you know how long it's been called that?
I don't know. I don't know. No, I
Well,
don't. I got no
there's
idea.
a lot of really dark stuff going on then.
Yeah, definitely. And since
How-
then, I have heard a few ghost stories of a child being seen there with his mother standing on the crossroads.
So what was the Welsh spelling of the lake of that lake?
Llyn, double N, sorry, double Lyn,
Yeah,
and then a boddi is drowning, so Bodi.
yeah.
Double D in Welsh is like the TH, the soft TH sound in English.
Okay.
Like the
Yeah.
boddi, and then babies, Babis.
Oh.
Mm.
Yeah, and I would also ask kind of what was going on for you in your life at the time, and you experienced that with your friend as well. So yeah, just was it kind of a turning point for you all?
It was for him because he
Right.
he he left and went off and lived on the road with travellers at that point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm still in touch with him. He lives down in Brighton, I think.
Mm.
Oh, yeah, it's Brighton area, I think. But he left. But for me, I can't think. No, I can't think of anything. Not now. But it was a period where I was going through a lot of stuff. Mental stuff.
Mm.
Well, you can imagine we were sort of a gang of young people together. We didn't have anybody to guide us really at the time.
Yeah.
We were playing in bands. We'd partake in magic mushrooms or whatever we could find. I can hear some listeners saying, "Ah, that's what it is. He was with his head on something," but I wasn't.
No.
No, no. Even though I do think actually that the experience of tripping on magic mushrooms or LSD, I think they definitely take you to the veil.
It opens your
Yeah,
mind. This is
yeah.
why they don't want people to have access to it.
No, exactly, exactly.
Because we wouldn't be trapped in our own kind of existential,
Mess.
stuff. We would, be beyond the wall, wouldn't we? No, it's very interesting. So at that crossroads then,
Hmm.
it's interesting that you had the sense of this kind of lion. And what
Yeah.
What did that
Yeah.
mean to you? What did that have any kind of resonance with you?
Well, the reason I thought of a lion was purely because I felt that something was growling at me in my face.
Oh,
Yeah, I didn't explain that properly, actually. It felt as if something was right in my face and above me, growling at me.
wow. Well,
Yeah.
then I'm thinking of Hecate at the Crossroads. So, Hecate is found at the Crossroads. She is, a witch goddess, and she has her dogs with her.
Oh my God.
So
Interesting. Yeah.
wondering if there's something around that, and she is.
The dogs is an interesting one. People have seen black dogs on that road.
Wow, that is
Street
very,
black dogs.
yeah.
Not real black dogs, but not physical. Well, yeah, I suppose they are physical in a way.
Wow,
But
yeah,
yeah, there have been stories of people seeing black dogs on the road.
goodness me.
Yeah,
So
with
it's
red eyes, typical. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. What was the name of
So
the ghost?
Hecate or Hecate, people pronounce it different words, different ways. Hecate or Hecate. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
So look.
I did feel though that it wasn't a female presence. It did feel male.
Hmm.
It could be one of the dogs.
Yeah, it could maybe have been, especially if you've seen black beasts around there, it could be a black dog in itself,
Mm,
or it could be
mm,
one of Hecate's black
mhm.
dogs. It just is it's interesting to note the growling and
Oh God,
her relationship with Crossroads.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, and
What fascinates me, sorry to cut across you there, but what fascinates me about this is that why do we get these experiences if they're not actually there? Because lots of people think, oh, it's just your imagination. But and I'll be honest, I'm always fighting with the practical side of me and the more esoteric side of me.
yeah,
I've got the two sides.
yeah,
So I'm always sort of thinking, was it my imagination or what? No, it can't be my imagination. It was too strong and things tally. Like, my friend was scared as well. The dog was scared in this case, and I've seen ghosts where more than one of us have seen the same thing. But that's for a different podcast, I suppose, ghost stories, isn't it? I don't know.
sure. Well, yeah, no, you've said it now. I need to know.
Yeah, okay, right, okay.
But just on that, responding to what you said there,
Yeah, yeah,
um, I think it's not a bad thing that you've got the two sides kind of arguing with each other and say, yeah, but what about that? But what about this? Because I think,
yeah,
if you, I mean, you and I know that these things are real. We felt them. We know
yeah,
it.
definitely, yeah,
But we can sometimes kind of then, if we're not kind of tethered in some way to this world, you can just kind of lose yourself. It's not
yeah,
a bad thing to actually ground yourself as well.
yeah,
Look at all of the options, because if you kind of fly too close to the sun kind of thing, or you step too too far down the path, um, you can just lose yourself.
yeah, definitely. I agree with that. You can't get lost
You can get
on the
lost. So
path, kind of. Yeah,
I think it's a good thing to keep grounded when you're dealing with these matters. So that's
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's always the sort of rational side of you that sort of pulls you back. But having said that, it's like lots of people say, I've seen an UFO,
mm.
but I don't believe in UFOs. You know,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
always get that, I've seen a ghost, but I don't believe in ghosts. Well, I've never quite understood that one, but
But to you
it's
then,
it's it's the dichotomy in it. It's the two sides of you. It's the rational side and the not so rational side, some would say. But yeah. But I know that, like you said, I know there's something that's causing all these experiences. Definitely, and it doesn't necessarily. Well, I've got my theories. I think it's something to do with time. A lot of it is to do with time. our perception of time, I think, is we're only seeing a very small part of what time actually is. I think,
Yeah.
you know, we're like these sort of the ant under the farmer's Wellington. He can see the Wellington, but he's got no idea what's behind it. it's, it's this sort of thing, you know. Oh God, shall I tell you about this ghost I saw?
Yeah.
It was like the scene was completely not spooky whatsoever. It was a sunny day. Yeah, we do actually get sun in North Wales sometimes. It was, oh God, but it was one of those rare sunny days where you had blue sky. I was visiting a little terraced house in on Anglesey in a sort of built-up area. And suddenly something catches my eye. We're sitting in the kitchen, and the front room is to my right, yeah. But the front room where he'd been sitting before I arrived, he'd been watching television, and he'd drawn the curtains, to, you know, so he couldn't see he couldn't see the screen because of the sun outside.
Yeah.
So he'd drawn the curtains, and the front room was dark. Okay? So I was talking, and I saw something move in the darkness of the front room, just in my peripheral vision, you know. So I thought, I'll have a look. Oh my God, it's the first time I'd actually seen a ghost. There was a little girl there. She was about 4, 5, 6, 6, perhaps 6. And I remember she was one colour. She was cream coloured, like a church candle. You know the way a church candle can be self-illuminating when it's lit?
Yes.
You know the body of the candle, there's a little light at the top of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
She was like that. They were as if she was illuminated from the inside. Yeah. And it was a dim light though. She wasn't strong or nothing like that. It was dim. And I remember she had a straight fringe straight across the glass. She had long hair, straight long hair, and which I thought was blonde because she was just one colour anyway. But she was looking at me, shoulder towards me, and she was looking over her shoulder at me. She stopped and looked at me, and then she shot off and disappeared behind. You know, I was looking at her through the through a door, open door, and she disappeared. You know, she walked, she disappeared behind the door frame, basically. Yeah? And this happened in about a second, 2 seconds. I turned back to carry on talking. I was in mid-sentence, you know, I was in mid-flow. And I just, oh God. And then the guy who I was with, he said, "Are you okay?" I said, yeah, I'm all right. I said, yeah, sorry, yeah. Sorry, I just lost concentration, I said. And I tried to gather my thoughts and, you know, get back into work mode. And he looked at me and said, "You've seen the little girl, haven't you?" I thought, oh my God, I can't believe it. Yeah, there's something there then. So I said, I have actually, I think I've seen a little girl in your front room. I said, "You're not the only one." He shouted for his girlfriend to come down from upstairs, and she regaled me with a story. A week before, she was watching television in that room, and something caught her eye, and there was a little girl walking away from her. She just saw her from behind, and she just disappeared. Also, a friend of his had been at the house a few weeks earlier. He'd gone to the toilet upstairs. He came back down, and he mentioned to his mate, you know, the guy that I was visiting. He said, "I think your granddaughter's got out of bed. She's walking the landing upstairs."
No way. So do they know who she is and what happened?
Oh well, no, and I did look into it as well. I couldn't find anything. I did find that 2 smugglers used to live in the house, and they were jailed for some petty, you know, smuggled some gin or something. They were jailed in Victorian times. No, but I couldn't find anything relating to a little girl.
With what kind of era do you think? It's hard to say when something's so sort of.
I definitely thought she was. God, I know it sounds cliched, but I did think she was turn of the century, 1900s, late Victorian. I don't know. Yeah.
Wow. I guess
Yeah,
the only other thing you could do is kind of look up in an archive at sort of death records relating to that house.
yeah.
That's the, death certificates in relation to that house.
How would you find them?
So if you went to an archive, or there might be archives online,
Mm,
sometimes you can put the address of the place in and they might be able to bring it up. Or it depends how big the kind of village or the town is. If you
yeah.
went to, say, like the local churches or something like that, they might keep a record of kind of deaths, maybe.
Mm, mm.
There were any from that village at that time. If it's a city, or a really large town, you're going to
Yeah, it's a large town. Yeah,
large town. Well,
yeah,
depending on what the population was back then, you might be able to find something.
yeah,
I think it sounds like she needs to go to the light, or be
yeah.
some way, or she's got something that she's needs to do, and it's
Yeah, there's one thing that I'd like to tell you about the experience as well, which I've never heard this description from somebody who's seen a ghost before, but it sounds a bit odd me saying this, but I felt that I wasn't perceiving her through my eyes. Strange. It she was it was coming into my consciousness, but not necessarily through my eyes, even though I did look there, and that's where I saw the image of this little girl. But I remember thinking, it's not coming in through my eyes. I'm not seeing it. It's permeating me somehow in it, through a different sense that we're not aware of. It definitely didn't feel as if I was looking at something.
right. Yeah, I mean, third eye here. This is where we start to, you know,
Oh,
this
what
is where we perceive.
what is the third eye then?
Right. So it's, I mean, some would say it's an extra sense of ours that we no longer utilize, except, a lot of people still do. I mean, if we have a sense of, if we see ghosts, or if we see
Hmm,
auras, if we kind of allow our own eyes just to go a bit fuzzy, go a bit out of focus.
mine are most of the time, yeah.
But you can sometimes see the auras around people, but you're perceiving that with your third eye, so it's just um, an extra sensory
Wow.
eye.
Yeah, that would fit. That would fit my sort of.
You're being so it's clairvoyant. Is that correct? Or so you've got clairaudient is when you hear.
Mhm.
Clairsentient is when you're sensing, and clairvoyant is when you're seeing. So you're either, see when you see something in your mind's eye, sort of thing,
Yeah,
your
that's
third
it.
eye. And you
Yeah.
can practice it. I mean, in the workshops that we do for body mirror system, we practice seeing auras. So it's like a muscle. You just use it, and you get more and more used to
Yeah.
the way that, some people think that it's just a part of our makeup that we no
Mhm.
longer use. Um,
Yeah.
out
I've always wanted to. I'm aware that I can sense things sometimes, but that's the first time I've had something visual. That was, but I'm afraid to develop it
Okay.
somehow. It's because I'm afraid that when you were talking about the getting lost on the path, I'm afraid of going just getting lost and not being able to snap out of it, or not being able to function in this day to day humdrum existence, knowing that all this stuff is going on all the time, and I'm afraid to be distracted. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you tend to kind of turn it on when you need it and turn it off when you don't, unless you're being called to something. Like it sounds this little girl wanted you to see her, I would say.
Yeah, yeah,
It appeared
yeah.
to you and to, the guy's girlfriend, and to somebody else within a
Mm,
short space of time. She wanted somebody to see her, and maybe acknowledge her.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I am sort of. I think one of the reasons that I have contacted you, to be honest, is that I want to develop this. You know, I'm getting to an age where if I don't do it now, I'll never do it, and I know I've got the potential.
Yeah,
I think I've, haven't I? Well, I must do because I've experienced so many odd things. You know, I think it's time to sort of try and develop it. I think, but oh, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. I just need somebody to guide me and help me with it, really, because what I do freak myself out sometimes. You know, I can freak myself out. You
do,
know,
do you,
strange things happen to me sometimes. In fact, something strange happened to me yesterday. Really strange. In this house where I am now. I don't know if I mentioned to you that I'm sort of clearing the house out basically to get it sold, and I don't want to sell it, but it's necessity. So I've got to sell it, and there's a lot of work to be done, and I feel as if the house doesn't really want to be empty and doesn't really want me to go. I feel that,
yeah.
right? And so strange things have started happening here. Not really big obvious stuff, but just stuff that doesn't make sense. Like yesterday, I was upstairs in the bathroom, and I heard this humming sound, right? Mm. So I put my ear to the stud wall that was next to where I was sitting. If you know, you can guess what I was doing. So I put my ear to the wall, and I could hear the humming sort of reverberating in the stud wall. But I couldn't find the source of the humming. I thought, oh, what the hell's going on? So anyway, I forgot about it, and I came back here the following day, and the hum was there again. I thought, what the hell's going on? So, right, I know what I'll do. I'll switch the electric off. So I went down to the fuse box and switched the electric off, and the hum stopped. I thought, oh, it must be something electrical then, you know.
Mhm.
So I happened to know somebody, another guy called Sean, an Irish Sean. Oh, he's a brilliant bloke. He is. Yeah. I said, Sean, do you fancy coming round to my house after work? There's a electrical hum going on there. And I don't know what the hell's going on. Ah, yeah, sure, yeah. He's got a hell of a strong Irish accent, you know. And I can't understand him somehow, but he did say, I'll come round to your house and have a look. So I thought, oh, great, so fair play to him. So I sat here waiting for him quite eagerly. He arrived. Long short of the story was, right, this hum was just an extractor fan, which I've never used. Right? I've never, ever used it. Yeah. It's a little fan that's inside these recessed lights that you get in ceilings, you know? So you've got the bulb, and you've got this little fan behind the bulb, and it's above the shower, so it sucks up the steam. I've never used it, right? And the switch for it, I can't even reach the switch. It's right against the ceiling in the landing outside the bathroom. And he said, the switch will probably be outside, he said. So he showed me the switch, switched it off, hum stopped, fan went off. But no one else, Joe, has been in this house. No one else has been here. My girlfriend's been here for an hour or so helping me clean. And I've asked her, did you accidentally switch this switch? She couldn't even reach it. She's too short. And I said, no, I didn't. I said, no. So, you know, how would you explain that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it's nothing huge, but something, that switch.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is a strange thing. Oh, I'm sorry
Yeah.
that you're leaving when you don't really want to. That's really hard, but
Yeah, but
you
it
need to
does
have
feel as if that,
could you have a chat with the house and explain why you're leaving?
yeah,
Might
the
might
house
feel a
knows.
bit sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, the house knows. I have done that already.
Uh,
Yeah.
in terms of, practicing what you're doing, I think start with meditation. I'll send you some links afterwards of meditations that I've made that are just freely available. There's on a little
Oh,
platform
brilliant.
Patreon, but you don't need to join it. It's just all free. It's all freely available. So just I'll send you that, and you can just click on them and
All
try them.
right, nice, brilliant. I will. I will. I have tried meditation a few times before. I did. I've got really bad tinnitus, since playing in bands and stuff, and that always clicks me out of it. It's so loud, you just become aware of this bloody tinnitus, this ringing, this really loud. I have got loud tinnitus, so that is, yeah. Have you got
Yeah,
any ideas on how to get past that?
well, I do. So tinnitus is in some. I work as a healer as well. Tinnitus is about your spirit calling you.
No way.
Yeah, it's about your spirit calling you, and you're not picking up the phone, and it's about meant to be doing whatever it is you're meant to be doing in this, in your life path. And it's like your spirit calling you and saying, come on, pick up the phone, listen to your spirit, listen to me, listen, align. Like it's encouraging your spirit to align with you as you on this earth living your life. My teacher used to describe it as it's a bit like when you've got kind of like the ranger and the person in the tower. If you've got, the person in the tower telling the ranger where they need to drive to, if you've got that kind of situation, and the ranger needs to be able to call the person in the tower, and they have to work as a team, kind of thing. In life, we're kind of going around as the ranger on the ground in the buggy, but we're not listening to the person in the tower. And you could imagine your spirit is the person in the tower calling the person in the buggy, going, no, you're going the wrong way. What are you doing? You need to be going this way. I can see where you need to go. You
It
need to
makes
go.
sense.
So maybe use some of the meditations that I'm going to send you to tune in to what it is that you do need to be doing at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
About to sell your home, so you're going in a different direction. So it's a perfect time to really tune in to whatever it is that where you're being led afterwards.
Perfect. It fits. My
Yeah,
intuition tells me it fits.
yeah,
It's obvious. What I mean it fits is what you've said, and what the way you've explained what the tinnitus is. It does fit.
yeah, yeah. It makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. In many ways, with my practical life and with my sort of inner life as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, interesting. Oh, nice one. I knew there was. I knew there was a reason why I got in touch with you.
yeah. Well, it's interesting to work with these ideas and see what shifts can be made then with that in mind, because
Yeah.
it's like when we know what the tension is that causes the symptom, we can actually let the symptom go
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
where we want to
the
go.
the the tinnitus, the sort of medical reason for it is something called Meniere's syndrome. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it sort of fits because it's a grey area in medicine, and they don't know exactly what causes it.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and I've had it for years. The music, the loud music, didn't help it, but it didn't cause the tinnitus. Yeah, apparently. Yeah, so Meniere's disease, I think, is one of these diseases where they can't find a reason why it happens and what the mechanics are behind it, which then opens it up to, well, it's your mind, it's your inner self, it's that's what's going wrong. Could be, yeah. That's what's causing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Way to describe the same thing, I guess, isn't it? So that's
Eh?
interesting. Another way to describe the same thing, from
Yeah.
a spiritual point of view and I guess, a psychological point of view, uh,
Mm.
but it's pointing to the same direction. So it's worth giving it a go and seeing if,
Yeah,
something
yeah. It's all
works.
linked.
Yeah. Oh, it's been so good to talk to you. Yeah,
Indeed.
it's really nice chat, and there's so much there, Sean. And yeah, I'm left thinking about the crossroads and especially these little imps. I'll have a think about the imps, and the or sprites, as you called them, the sprites in the
Yeah.
bedroom. And have you ever dreamt of them since? Have they ever
No,
kind of
I haven't. I haven't. Do you know, they were deep in my subconscious until I heard your program, and that's when I was reminded of them, and it was like, what the hell? I remember about them. I remember them. It was like a bit of an awakening. It was like, bloody hell, I've forgotten about that. How
yeah,
could I forget that? You know, it was one of those feelings.
yeah. Did with the connection with Pinky, is that the same time, do you think? Is there any connection between what happened with this kind of giant
Yeah, it was the same time, Joe. Yeah.
same time? Did they go when this sort of whatever it was posing as Pinky went? Do you know if they went around the same time, or perhaps it's too difficult to
Yeah, I couldn't pinpoint it to the sort of down to the week, but it was the same, definitely the same period, same sort of, I could break it down to the same year or even half year, same 6 months, same sort of period, yeah. Just before I started, but no, I'd only just started primary school. That was the first year. So, not primary school, before primary. It was,
peaceful?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so must have been young. I was about 3, 4 perhaps.
Cool. And the marshy area as well. I'm going to look into that, and I'll look up some of the stories that you mentioned. What I'll do is I'll do a little Patreon episode of about those stories and the lights as well with Mary Jones,
Brilliant, yeah.
or Patreon bonus with all of those, so I can kind of look into those a bit more, and I'll send you that too.
Oh, great. Because I do think that area deserves some sort of work being done on the whole thing. As holistic, everything, bring everything in. All these strange things that happened there over the years, the lights, the fairies, stories, everything. Bring them
Do
all
you know,
together.
it's a funny thing as well because the woman who was the guest from The Puppets Are Coming For Me, which is with the imps,
Right, yeah.
she later moved to Anglesey and had crazy experience in a house, when they lived there. So that's a funny little crossover link as well, is that she
Yeah,
moved to that area. And because I was just thinking, yeah, you're right, she could testify to that there's a lot going on in those kind of areas. So yeah, it's funny, isn't it, that we do have these hotspots. Of course, it is on, the edge of the land. Again, these kind of coastal places, and the amount of history is
yeah,
huge. I mean, so these are really, really interesting places. And
yeah. Anglesey is yeah. Well, as you know, it's full. It really is full of sort of stuff happening there. Yeah, and when you talk to the locals, everybody sort of believe that there's more.
yeah, they know.
Yeah, everybody says, but yeah. We don't know what it is. But yeah. They all know it's there. You
They live
know.
with it. They live with it, don't they?
Yeah. There's a sort of refreshing acceptance of it all.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
know. I
yeah,
like that. Yeah, it's you're not made to look like a fool if you say you've seen a ghost.
that's right. No, it's a good thing.
Yeah, by most, not all.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really nice to meet you, Sean,
Ah,
and
nice to meet you as well. Yeah, brilliant.
soon. And
Hmm.
yeah, just thanks so much again for sharing. I really appreciate it. Loved hearing
Well, I'm,
this.
I'm I'm glad that you've sat down and listened to the stories and you've sort of validated some things as well. I feel as if, yeah, I'm not as mad as that after all, because you do think sometimes, you think, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, you can doubt yourself sometimes, but don't.
Yeah, I just doubt myself sometimes. I think, well, bloody hell, but no, I do and I don't. I know, really. Yeah, but it's nice. It's nice to have validation of somebody else. That let's, yeah, that's what it is, I suppose. Yeah,
About it. Well,
kindred spirits. That's the one. That's the one.
that's it. That's it.
Yeah,
There's many of us together, and I'm sure that people listening to this as well, or watching this, or listening to this, will be thinking of, things about, the lakes, the Crossroads, and I'm sure I'll be thinking when I get off the call now, I'll probably be thinking of things as well. Also, the those beings standing in the field, the hooded. Well, these weren't hooded.
No, no.
In your story, they're wearing kind of white, and that guy was bearded. And there's a story that's in Evans Wentz, and I cannot remember where it was, but I'm almost certain that that was in Wales.
Mhm.
And that was these hooded beings kind of in a field that was spotted by somebody walking by. Now, this isn't the one that you immediately think of is the Kay Caled
Yeah,
story, which was Edward Williams, who was later to become a minister, and then
yeah,
that was we mostly know about this story because of Edmund Jones, because it was in his apparitions and something or other of Wales. I can't quite remember.
I'm not all fair with the yeah, go on, yeah.
I'll send you the link to it because it's freely
Okay.
available on archive. I mean, I've got the
Oh
book.
yeah, you did send me a link to the story. You did actually, yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
that would have been on Simon Young's podcast, Boggart and Banshee, and
That's what it was. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
he did a really good job of covering that story of the KK
yeah.
story of the dancing fairies in the field. But there's another story where there's a group of beings, again life size, because the ones in K Caled were actually small, kind of dwarf. They were smaller beings.
Oh, were
Not
they? Yeah,
quite
I didn't
dwarf.
remember that.
They're not quite dwarfs, but they were smaller beings. But the ones that I'm thinking of that were kind of stood in a field, it was either Wales or it might have been the Isle of Man. But I can't quite put my finger on that story. So I will send that to you as well when I've tracked that down.
Okay, great.
Pop that in the Patreon as well. But yeah, I won't keep you any longer.
That's
Um,
it.
and yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Nice one. Yeah, well, thanks very much for everything. And I'll speak to you again sometime, no doubt.
You're good. All right then. Right, night night. Bye.
Okay, see you. See you, Joe.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening and watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider joining us on Patreon for dozens more episodes of unreleased bonus content, monthly online events, and a private chat. We are a warm, supportive community, and it really helps to support the project. Find us on patreon.com/The Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast.